Lawrence Neal here, and welcome back to highintensitybusiness.com. This is episode 287, and today we're going to talk all about virtual training. And to join me, I have legendary Dr. Ben Bokikio. Ben, welcome back to the podcast. Great to have you.
Great to be here, Lawrence.
I would introduce you with your typical bio, but I think you've been on the podcast enough that most people recognize who you are. They've probably read your book, so I think we can we can skip the formalities and get straight into the meat of the podcast.
Sounds
So,
good.
we've been emailing back and forth, obviously, about virtual training, and you were getting really excited about it, which was really intrigued me because you've been in this game for years. You've been training people with machines and in studios for years. So I got to be honest, I was surprised that you took to virtual with so much enthusiasm, but you saw some really good reactions and responses of clients. So do you want to just talk about how you got started, like what happened there?
Well, obviously, everybody knows that everything's been kind of put on hold or paused or reduced significantly by the COVID deal. And, I have a lot of people that have worked with me that have their own businesses and have been certified and all that. And I could see they was kind of suffering. And, then I did a couple of stuff I've done with you, online and some other podcasts that I've done. And I said, hell, there's a lot of people giving advice on the internet. And, fortunately, my wife's a techie. I'm not. I mean, I'm the least techie guy that you would know. But I said to my wife, I said, I wonder if you could do this stuff online. She goes, yeah, it's easy, just like any of your meetings. So about 4 days later, I get a call from a guy who had seen me at a conference. And he said, do you know anybody you could refer me to do virtual training? I said, well, what about if I try it? And he was like, wow, you want to do it? I said, yeah, I'm interested. So I started, and I sent that video to you of me training Mark. And I was absolutely blown away by how good the sessions are. I said, this is crazy, I mean, I'm sitting here with a can of diet ginger ale, and I'm training 2 or 3 people, and I'm getting a great kick out of it. They're getting great results, and more people are asking about this. And I think it's definitely a wave, a part of the wave of the future for sure. I think you have to include it in most facilities. I think it's a subtle way to get people in the door. If we're talking about sales, but say, you can come to the gym, and we can also do virtual if you're stuck in not traffic, but if you can't get out that day, if you got a commitment, sure. You don't want to travel, whatever the case may be. And it's a great way to maybe, like you mentioned, to do a hybrid kind of a thing. Now, I have people that drive 45 minutes to train with me, 15 minutes. And these people have other things to do. So a lot of times they'll try to schedule something in my area, to do an ancillary activity or something. But, if they were busy, and these people usually are busy, hell, I even said to them, and most of them have something at home we can use to train on. And if not, Lawrence, I think I'm becoming a resistance band maestro, okay? I have picked up so many little hints and subtleties. I may even write a chapter or something about how to use bands, because they have some disadvantages, there's no question, limitations, but they have some advantages. For example, I have one arm, one shoulder that has no external rotators, okay? So one arm is weaker than the other, for pecs, for shoulder, for everything. I can adjust that band tension and length, so I can work bilaterally by just having less tension on my left arm than my right. I can do also with the bands, you do a bilateral curl, bicep curl. And at the end, if you want to go a little farther, okay, you just, do one arm at a time. I mean, and you can lean into it, get a little more isolation. I mean, I've been picking up some real, you can do isometric, you can do short range kind of stuff to finish off, to get that ultra fatigue, ultra exhaustion and stuff like that. It's crazy. I mean, I've got one of my guys, Doug Reynolds, who I think you know from Low Carb USA. Dougie, he is Low Carb USA. But he's gotten pretty strong doing my system. Okay, he's done the smart system and put on at 58 years old. I mean, he must have put on 10 pounds of muscle, right? And he's in decent shape. But I've seen him do 300-pound bands for his squats. Now, the 300-pound squats are okay. I mean, so that's pretty significant. With the bands especially, it's interesting. But to get into a squat position, support your arms at shoulder height, hands at shoulder height, and then stand up, that to me is like almost Cirque du Soleil kind of stuff. I mean, that's not easy. That's harder than the squats. But, so you can work at any level. And then I've got the most sedentary person, people who haven't worked out maybe forever, and I can start them on a simple workout. I mean, I'm really incredibly pleased. I'm giddy about the damn thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's exciting to hear, because it's so interesting that you're not the only person, or that's not the first person I've heard say, I'm learning about how we can use these bands and do these different types of protocols and do isometrics. And it's like you're rediscovering the basics, right? Because we're also used to using machines and very, more kind of fancy tools to deliver a stimulus. So it's kind of fascinating to see trainers go back to appreciating the simple, basic equipment and basic exercises that can be used really, really effectively. So let's talk about the routines in a bit more detail. So I'm really interested to hear, what do you do when you work with someone who's either very senior or just very kind of deconditioned? So they need like the most basic virtual workout design. Like, what does that typically look like?
Well, I think you know me long enough to know that I use the same basic foundational exercise format with everything. Mm-hmm. I mean, I just trained. I used some Total Gym and some ARX yesterday, and a leg extension, leg curl selectorized. Okay, so I'm open to whatever I think works best for me or the person. Now, if you've got limited resources, I'll tell you. Let me go a little bit off track here. I am not a very big proponent of simple body weight exercise. I know some people, Ted Naiman and a couple of these other guys have, you don't need any equipment. To me, that's silly. Okay, let's try to contort our bodies to a place where we have to do these exercises that are productive, instead of, the whole idea of Nautilus and the whole idea of some of these other machines that are all knockoffs, basically, was that you could accommodate the basic primary movements, the anatomical movements, by designing a machine that worked and facilitated that movement mechanically, okay? So that's great. That's the reason that you and I would all day and night long would prefer a machine, I think, if we had it. One of the last things I said to Arthur before he passed, I said, Arthur, if we had perfect rotary machines or good rotary machines for every major muscle group, would there be any reason to do anything else? He said, no. I said, I agree. Okay, so let's start with that. But as I've gotten older, don't forget, I was one of the original Nautilus guys that they tried some of the huge cam machines on in Florida. I mean, I was a kid in graduate school doing that stuff. This is close to 50 years ago. Okay, now I was sold on the fact that these were the best things in town, and we were going to get, the greatest results in the world. Now, they were great machines, and I still to this day have vintage, some 1980 great condition Nautilus machines that I use. I mean, I love them. Okay, but as I did a study with Total Gym that I presented. It was an IRB study. I presented to the American College of Sports Medicine and American Physiological Society. I did a study where we did Total Gym exercise. That's all we did. And when Total Gym first came out, I didn't like the guy who was representing them locally, and I poo-pooed him. Now I realize I met the owner, Tom Campanero, at the 1971 Mr. America contest in York, Pennsylvania. So I know this guy for how many years. And he said, why don't you try the machine? Tell me what you think. Does it shoot real bullets? Not that he cares, because they're selling gazillions. I mean, especially with the COVID thing, these home equipment guys are rolling in money. Okay. Yeah. The band company that I deal with had no more bands. Yeah, they had to reorder, had a 90-day halt. Okay. Anyway. So I did this Total Gym study, and I could not believe the results I got. And I was kind of skeptical, but I said, you got to do a study, you got to be open-minded, right? And I couldn't believe it. I said, you know what? The form, the technique, the going to failure, the order, all the stuff that I have included in my system works with this stuff. I mean, I said, now, and I was a little bit like a snob with equipment. You got to have this as the best, blah, 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 blah. And I really am impressed by the fact that if you adhere to basic tenets of good high-intensity exercise, that you can do it with almost anything. Now, again, is it ideal? Is it perfect? In the end result, over a period of a year or two or a lifetime, Lawrence, I don't know what the end result would be. Is it a 5% difference? Is genetic limitation really the factor? Is really the ceiling? that kind of a thing. So, but so the bands, so I said, all right, bands. I had a few at home. If I had to go to a place where there was nothing available, I'd throw them in a suitcase, get a little bit of work. But now I've become like an aficionado. I'm saying these things are not bad. I mean, I had a couple people come over that we had some meetings, and I trained them, and they said, this is the best workout I've ever had. And it wasn't because the bands are the best piece of equipment in the world. I think they're great for a number of reasons, but I pushed the guy. We used good form. We used good sequence. We used good load time, and we went to failure, okay? Maybe that's the deal. I mean, after all of us are searching for the perfect, like my thing with Kenny Hutchins, God bless him, is that he has been searching, Don Quixote searching for the perfect windmill, searching for the perfect machine. And I'm not so sure there is a perfect machine. Now, there are some that are certainly biomechanically advantageous. But I'm wondering now, after 40 years almost, or 35 years of being, you got to do it on this stuff because of variable resistance and this blah, blah, blah. And now I'm wondering, I'm saying, was I short-sighted? Mm-hmm. And if you stop learning, Lawrence, I'm 72 years old pretty soon. If you're short-sighted, you stop learning. So you got to keep an open mind. Now, I don't say, geez, look at all the time I wasted. Nah, we did the best we could at the time with the knowledge we had. Okay. And stuff's coming out like ARX, and I'm working with a company that's making kind of ARX stuff, I think. And I think that has some advantages, but I do want to study that. In other words, I want to see if we do purely negatives, if we do purely positives, if we do some isometric at the end, if we, all the variables we can measure and see if there's a real difference. And I'm hoping to get somebody like Keith Barr or somebody like that to actually do some muscle work with me, so we can check, see, is there a difference? Is it 6-1, half a dozen? Because we don't know any of this stuff. And it'd be kind of, before I leave the scene, literally, then I want to know if maybe some of this may be beneficial. Maybe we could get away with, maybe we can get away with like, what's Dougie McGuff put in there, like a 3 or 4 exercise workout. Maybe we can. Maybe if we do compound movements, we can get the same benefit as if we did isolated. I'm not positive about that. I don't think so, but at least I'm eager to question it and see. So that's, but whatever they have at home, I have a lot of people that have total gyms. I have a lot of people that have Bowflex. And anybody can buy bands for $50. They can get a great set of bands. Okay. And if they get real strong, another $15 for a 100-pound band. And you got Bob's your uncle. You got everything you need. So for me, and that's so transferable. You can take it on a holiday. You can take it when you go on business trips. If you can't get out of the gym, the weather, something, who knows what happens. You can do it. And you're not going backwards. I mean, and especially now in this time, and I know. I mean, you've got two reactions to this whole coronavirus deal. One is, hell, I can't do anything. I'm going to sit on my ass. The other is, now's a great time for me to do something because I have nothing else to do, So, yeah. And I think, as an aside, I think this whole thing, in our business has opened up the eyes of people as far as the importance of health. Because and I know the people who die and get really sick from this virus are people whose immune system is compromised. People who are diabetic, people who are obese. Strong, healthy people, they ain't dying from this. Okay, 100%. I'm 72. If I get coronavirus, if I get it, first of all, I think my immune system's strong enough I won't, but that may be delusional. But
maybe you've already had it.
Yeah, no, I got tested for antibodies.
Okay.
Right? And unfortunately, I didn't have it.
But sometimes you can have a T-cell response and no antibodies,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah. We can go into that, but that's
a whole nother topic.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think, and that while we're talking about this, I think it's very much worthwhile for people to increase their muscle strength as a part of a vital part, a major component of immunity. I'm thinking of coming up with an immunity test involving muscle strength, some blood work. I mean, there are things you can check your immunity. And that 2007 study by Ruiz and Blair, where they said muscle strength is the singular most relevant component to longevity. If you're in the top third for your age and gender, and there's like 10,000 people that were subjects of this thing. If you're in the top third for your age and gender in muscle strength, whether you're a smoker, a diabetic, obese, old, young, you are 35% less likely to die of cancer and 40% more likely to live to be 100. That singular factor, muscle strength. Okay.
Yeah. What was the actual title of that? Do you remember the exact
I don't
title? I'll
remember the
put it in
title,
the
but it would just go Ruiz and Blair, 2007, exercise and aging. Go Google that and it'll come up.
Okay.
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 Interesting.
Interesting.
Now, the way they presented it, you got to go like 14 pages before you can make sense of the statistical analysis. But that's what it basically concluded. Okay.
Cool.
And a legit study, landmark study, actually. But, come on.
Yeah,
So,
that's fascinating. I'm so much as I get older and as I, raise my family and take on more responsibility, that kind of stuff becomes much more interesting to me versus the how do I maximize muscle hypertrophy. I'm
yeah.
sure that stuff's still interesting to me. I'm sure there'll become a phase in my life when I'm, my 8-month-old is a 20-year-old and maybe I have that time back where I can focus more, but it's just interesting how that particular outcome, being protective against cancer, having just far more protection against any cause of mortality is is really interesting.
Yeah.
And
No, I
I
mean,
feel more passionate about that. Yeah.
I mean, I've said this for a long time. Our business has to do with people not dying and looking good. Those are the two main,
Yeah.
main impeti. And say, so one thing about not dying is anti-aging, because the older you get, the more likely you are to die. So that's the most critical factor to death and mortality is age, obviously. But so
Sure.
what you can't avoid that, but you can stay strong, muscularly strong, with a minimum. That's why high intensity is so rewarding. So you get such a good bang for your buck because it really entails. Okay, think about that statement, Lawrence. Muscle strength is the number one correlative to aging, to longevity. All right, think about that. But what does that mean? And I just gave a big. Actually, I'm going to give it. I recorded it, but I'm going to give a talk in the low carb meeting that's going to be virtual in about a week or so. It's going to be, and I think it's $49 or $99 to get the whole 4 days and CMEs and all that. But anyway, my talk was on the power of the muscle system. We have for decades and forever almost. In medical school and graduate school, I was never taught, even though I was interested in it personally, and nobody was taught about the power of the muscle system, meaning it is probably the most potent, powerful signaling system that we have, probably equal to the brain, if you think about it. And I went over all the different facets, the cardiovascular system, we all know this. The cardiovascular system responds to the impetus, the instigation of muscle work. The respiratory system, the hormone system changes. The nervous system responds. The skeletal system, obviously. Okay, so all of these systems respond to the generator. Okay, what makes it happen? Muscle action. Okay, all of it. We wouldn't need a heart that can pump as much blood as we can right now if we weren't meant to perform huge amounts of muscle action. We would need respiratory system that can, in 2 seconds time, increase respiration by and oxygen intake by tenfold if it wasn't for muscle action. So my point is, this system just physiologically has been undervalued as just being kind of mechanical. It is hormonally, chemically, okay, so powerful that it affects everything: digestion, energy usage and storage, thinking. Okay, why now are we prescribing high intensity exercise for Alzheimer's? Because it affects the brain more significantly than steady state. Okay, think about the developing species. You had to be absolutely, at the top of your game mentally when you were trying to take down a woolly mammoth. Okay, you lost concentration. You're gonna get a tusk enema. I mean, you're gonna get stuck. So think about it. It all makes sense when we kind of reverse engineer the human physiology. Why do we get this way? Okay, so the muscle system comes up every time. Every time we fit, what's really important? The muscle system is the generator. That's why high intensity and the stuff that you're doing is absolutely precious.
Yeah, it's beautifully put, and I just really appreciate you highlighting just the massive bang for your buck you get with this stuff, and it's just I never lose passion and excitement for that. Just going back to the original question, Ben, I'd love to hear how you are delivering that to some of the most deconditioned or senior clients you work with, or who you would recommend others working with, or just so we can I'd like to get an understanding of the type of template of a workout, and then maybe we can dig into some of the nuance. Yeah.
Okay, so again, I use the basic structure as follows. You
Mhm.
know, first I want to know if there's a problem, if there's a knee, if there's a back, and then obviously if somebody's obese and will have mechanical issues. But I
Mhm.
will work the large muscles first. So and then not to push my book, but for $10 or whatever it is, I think it has a lot of good stuff in it. I have 3 workouts in that book. I have a total gym workout because they sponsored some of my stuff. I have a fitness gym, a regular conventional gym workout, and I have a band workout. I have all 3, and all 3 of them follow the same protocol. So, for example, my band workout, and this can be done by anybody. Okay, band squats. Okay, so you can start with a 10-pound band, which is basically this side of a feather. All right, so you get some people. This is why I'm not good with body weight exercise. So I have some people who can't really do a squat comfortably, and they're just not mechanically oriented that way, or a little leery of bending it. So I have them do a wall seat. Okay, and they can. Some people, you get a 300-pound guy who's out of shape. Okay, and have him come down 7 inches in a wall seat, not the perpendicular. Okay, not to 90 degrees,
Yeah, yeah.
and understand what's high intensity. And I've done this, a million times with you, Lawrence. High intensity is recruiting the type 2B muscle fibers. Now, for those people sliding down 7 inches on a wall, and I tell them, put a stool or something down there in case you can't get up. Okay, put something under you. But okay, so now we take that precaution. You're talking about the most sedentary. And in 10 seconds or 15 seconds, they've gone into the type 2 fibers and they fail. Okay, so maybe I'll have it do it 2 or 3 times to try to build up some muscle endurance, some technique of getting used to that.
Well, let's just pause there for a
Yeah,
second. So,
yeah.
do they fail, or in my opinion, don't they more likely just give up and slip down the wall? So
No,
that
I've never seen.
by doing a rest pause, like you say, by having them give it another go, it's like you're driving a deeper fatigue, and I'd say you're getting closer to true failure. No.
Well, see, think about this. That's the true failure is a semantic. I have a semantic issue
Okay.
because I don't even know what the hell that means. Okay, so true failure,
Okay.
as far as I'm concerned, we're taxing these type 2B muscle fibers, these life or death, fight or flight muscle fibers, to a threshold level. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's true failure that would correspond to an upward adaptation. Good
Mm-hmm.
stuff happening. Okay, all right. So it may be, Lawrence. I mean, don't forget, when you're first starting, the window is huge. Anything you do is productive. Walking is productive,
100%. I
right?
agree with that fully. Yeah, yeah, I
And
agree with
the
that.
reason it is because I think you can get to these type 2B fibers because you're so deconditioned in the other strata that they right away have to go to their life and death kind of emergency. It's an emergency for somebody to try to stand there for 10 seconds, down 10 inches, from a standing position. So we can get there. The reason I do it a number of times is I am trying to build up some kind of endurance, okay, just a whole general capacity to do work,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But maybe we're getting it. Maybe we're getting that stimulus with that first 15 seconds if they go to failure. Maybe that's what they got. But
Okay.
maybe relative to nothing, it's sufficient.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
to be a judge of that, this is real subjective. When you're training an individual, or you're talking about human performance or exercise performance, it is subjective. It changes daily. It changes momentarily. It has to do with sleep and attitude,
Yeah. Yeah.
and confidence, and there's so many issues. We could do 14 sessions about what that means. But so yes, so I'll start them off if they can't do a squat, or I'll have them. And then if they get so strong that the bands now become cumbersome, like I said, to try to get a 200-something pound band resistance from the bottom position up, I'll
Mm.
pre-fatigue him with a wall seat. I got one guy that I'm training now who's just regular dude, okay? And he did a 3-minute friggin' 90-degree wall seat for me the other day. He started
Tough.
off at 25 seconds, Lawrence. 3 minutes. That 3 minutes. Try, okay? Anyway, then I put him right to a band squat so he could use like a couple 100 pounds, because he's capable of well over 300, but I don't know if he could actually mechanically get it to the right position. I think his arms would fail before his legs. That's the downside of a band. So I arranged that this guy pre-fatigue, and then in about 55 seconds, a minute, we got to failure with the squats. Okay, loved it. I think I'm a genius. I'm Leonardo da Vinci of band or something. I don't know. All right, so and then the next thing I do for people, if they have no major back problems, or they can handle it, is I do a kind of a vaguely bent leg, but a stiff-legged deadlift for glutes and hands. Because the limitation on the bands is really lower body, I think. But that's how I try to get through it. And if they have any back problems, I don't do it, or I'll do a hold to start. If they have sciatic problems, I have a stretch that I do after. Okay, so that's my lower body. Then I do, because you're putting the bands in the door. The next one would be a row. That's my next biggest group, and they can handle some pretty significant weight. But by the same token, when you ask me about sedentary, hell, the most sedentary person in the world who can stand up, and if they can't stand up, they can do it in a chair, by the way, can do a row, okay? Mm-hmm. And surprisingly, they're stronger than they think. So for that sedentary a novice, they're pretty, hey, listen, you're handling 80 pounds in a row. And let me tell you something, just about everybody this side of a cadaver can do 80 pounds, okay? The other great thing about the bands is, if the weight's a little too heavy, resistance is a little too heavy, move a little closer. Okay, if it's too light, while we're doing the set, step 2 inches back. And I love that. I love that dynamic possibility of bands. I mean, instead of having to go reach down, set a pin in, you can change that resistance for that last rep. If I want you to step back an inch and let's do an isometric or something. You can fiddle with it. Once you get a little bit of facility, with the bands, I'll tell you what, you can do some good stuff. I'm proud of myself, man. I learned this stuff, and I'm like, walking around the neighborhood saying, hey, I'm the band guy, baby. Let's put the band back together, and if the band is me. But I mean, it really is fascinating. So that's what I do. So then I'll do row, then maybe I'll do pecs, curls, kickback, tricep. I go out of sequence with the lateral raise because it has to come out of the door. And it's so much lighter than the other things. So I move that to the end because I don't want to have them going in and out of the door. I'm trying to get, move the workout along. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's my basic routine, and then I do a little bit of abs, because I think abs are really crucial for low back. I mean, any of my my low back clients, patients come to me, I have them do crunches, and I have them at some point get their leg raises with the flexion in the lower spine, because that's the function of the abs. But anybody, I mean, even if somebody, for example, crunches, right? You get a huge person. I put a towel under their neck to protect them. So let's try to do a crunch and try to press your lower back into the floor. That is your first move. That isolates abs. And then maybe that's all they can do. And maybe they can lift their head up 2 inches, okay, and hold it. But they can feel that they're working their abs, okay? Then I'll give them maybe a sciatic stretch, because almost all of them have some back issue. And then, I've got a 15-minute workout plus 5 minutes of, other stuff, ancillary stuff. Plus, I always tell them a joke at the end. So there's my, that's it. That's my deal. Okay. But it's
I love that about your workout routine, the joke at the end.
But I'm running out of some of these people that want to stay with me. But anyway, so that's what I do. But anybody, I mean, I have a lady in a wheelchair that does the workout. Okay. And I set the wheelchair up, and we do the row. We do whatever we can. I put a ball behind her so she leans back in the chair to do some back extension. I mean, you can make this happen. You know a little bit of anatomy, have a little bit of intuitive, creativity here. But these people are getting, bod measurable results. Okay, this is for real. So they're not dreaming this stuff, and I see them. I mean, I see that as they're lying down to do their crunches. I say, God, your gut is nowhere near there. I mean, you've shrunk, and again, like I said, my longest client now lost 26 pounds. He's below goal weight. He lost 4 inches in his waist. His body comp, I think he dropped 6 or 7%. So I think from like 20 something to 50. I mean, good, significant stuff, right?
This is obviously diet intervention as well, alongside the training.
Almost all of my people. In fact, I always recommend low carb, higher protein than the basic. I've got 3 people now that are doing carnivore, and that was not on my impetus, but I said, hell, they've been reading about it, and then they've been going low carb, and they're loving it. Did you have Andy Berger? Have you heard of Andy Berger, the type 1 diabetic?
No.
You got to get him on your podcast. This kid, he's 29. He, the type 1 diabetic, right? Starting to get some retinopathy, some eye problems. He's maybe 5'6" at the tops, and he was up to 235 pounds, okay, something like that. And he realized, and he heard, I think Vinnie Tortorich of all people, but he said, the carbs are killing you, kind of a thing. Started reading, started studying. Type 1 diabetic now, so he doesn't produce insulin. Okay,
Sure.
Tough case, tough scenario. Anyway, long story short, in a period of 2 years, this kid is down to 135, 140 pounds.
Wow.
His A1C, Lawrence, if you know anything about these numbers, is 4.9. He's type 1 diabetic. He's down, I think, from 100 some odd plus units of insulin to 10 a day. All right. He's a type 1 who's almost insulin independent, which would be like, a journal article about some freaky thing. Anyway, and he's doing the twice a week smart. He walks every day. He's now doing carnivore, but he did low carb. But most of my people, I mean, and I'm also not opposed to Teddy Naaman's stuff about the PE ratio.
Yeah, I like
I think I'm leaning, I think I've always leaned that way because I was always a high protein person. And then years ago with OptiFast, which was it was a protein sparing modified fast medical weight loss deal, okay, for bariatric patients. I came up with a clever name called OptiFit, which was basically my exercise protocol. And we saw some really good, and that was protein sparing modified fast. So there was no carbs, protein supplements, and then they started eating. They'd have some salad, but and once we added the exercise, these people did well. So I think for most people, carbs are the toughest thing. But I think if you follow Teddy Naaman's PE ratio thing, it's what he calls energy toxicity. Too much energy or the inability to store that in a healthy manner is the problem. Okay, and I just think it's easier to cut carbs, in my experience, than it is to cut fats. So, but I think you can do it either way. And it works, and it's healthy, and we can measure all these things.
Yeah, I actually had Ted on the podcast to talk about his book and related to the PE diet. I want to say we're about 3 or 4 months ago, maybe a bit further, but yeah, about that. So no, I'm obviously a big fan of Ted, and I think he's doing some great work there.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do, Ben, is I've actually just wrote out that workout that you gave. So 10 exercises essentially. And I think it'd be quite fun actually to focus the majority of this rest of this podcast on working with those that are deconditioned or real beginner level, because I think that's one of the challenges we have in high intensity training is, okay, how do I work with someone who's severely deconditioned when they have no access to very little equipment, right? And in this case, we'll say they have access to resistance bands. So I'm just going to dig into some of these because I've got some sort of nuanced questions. So with the wall sit, do you think, I'm just curious because I perhaps need to refer back to my my own kind of knowledge base, but like, do you think the wall sit sufficiently fatigues the whole lower body? Do you think it's mostly fatiguing, obviously the quadricep musculature, or do you think it's a great kind of all round lower body workout? Where do you think the weaknesses are in the wall sit? Just curious.
Understand, whenever you do compound movements for your lower body, I don't care if it's squats, leg presses, wall sit, you're going to feel your quads. Your quads are the most sensitive. Okay, you're going to feel your quads, so everybody thinks it's just quads. But if you think of, for example, if I severed your glutes and your hamstrings, you'd fall on your now severed glutes. Okay, so they do work. Do I think they're the primary movers? Not necessarily, but they do a lot. I think the glutes do a lot of work on a wall seat. Yes, I do. Because think about a squat. What's a wall seat? It's an isometric squat, right? Okay, and it's just all we're doing is reducing the effective resistance. And your hamstrings have to keep your leg at 90 degrees. I mean, again, if you didn't have any hamstring contraction, you couldn't keep 90 degrees. Your quads, will extend your knee, but you have to basically a little bit extend your hips so they don't flex and collapse. So your hamstrings are working. But the reason I do the deadlifts afterward is because I think I can get some more glutes and hamstrings, and kind of stiff-legged deadlifts are big-time glutes and hammies, right? So I think I covered that. But I think the wall seat is a great intro to people say, I can't do this, I can't do that. You say, do me a favor, put a stool down behind you, put your back against the wall, and let's slide down a few inches. Can you hold that? Oh, yeah. Can you slide down a few more inches? Yes, I can. Hold that now and breathe until you feel that you're tired, really tired. And when they do that, it's a sense of accomplishment because now, excuse me, Lars, they have this sense that I can do something. And that was pretty simple. And it's not ominous and it's not threatening. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of cool. So
Builds confidence.
behaviorally and mechanically, it's a win. Okay. And then with the deadlift, I mean, hell, if their back hurts them, I don't do the deadlift. I'm going to have to just pass on it. I just don't think it's worth it. So I'll give them some stretches at the end to maybe get that back a little more limber and get some spasm out of the piriformis or whatever's going on with their sciatic condition. Okay, which is
how do you feel about squats holding a chair? So for someone who can't squat freehand, doing a bodyweight squat but holding a chair in front of them for balance.
Yeah, okay, all you're asking me is, are there different ways to diminish effective resistance and to allow somebody who's compromised to do that exercise and work those muscles? And I say, fine. I find the thing against the wall is secure, is a secure kind of move. They feel their whole body against the wall. But yeah, if you can do that and you find that that's better, I have no problem with that. I didn't invent all these different maneuvers, but understand anatomically what we're trying to do. We're trying to have these muscles contract to a point of failure, whatever that might be. Okay, so yeah, I'm cool with that. Some people, feel more secure against the wall or whatever.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting. One thing I haven't tried yet is taking a client and having the like a ball on their back against the wall and doing a squat, like a kind of a wall sit or a ball squat, I guess you would call that.
Yeah.
And slowly moving up and down in that range of sort of small range of motion.
Yeah.
Discover Strength do that, and I think they've had a lot of success getting clients with that. Yeah,
anything you can do to make this more digestible, palatable for the person that has these mechanical and functional limitations. Yeah, that's fine. You start from zero, and then everybody's a hero because anything you do works. Lawrence, that's why you and I know you start any silly ass exercise program and you get benefit from it. Because from go to zero to something doesn't take very much. It's when we get to this middle level of fitness and higher levels of fitness that it takes some expertise, some understanding, some subtlety, okay? But in the beginning, it all works. I would rather start them on a routine they can do for the rest of their life. I mean, I can train advanced major dudes, okay? But that same routine I just described to you for the sedentary, diabetic 300-pound lady, I can train some of my world-class athletes. Kick their butts, okay? So it's applicable. And I'm a guy who doesn't really get behind, let's change the workout up. Let's check. Why? You got the same muscles with the same functions you had when you were born. And if it works consistently and we got the major muscle groups, I think most people like that. It's the security. Like I tell people, you see the workout you're doing? And they look at me, as I'm in decent shape, they say, it's the exact same workout that I do. It's the exact same workout that my Olympic gold medalist does, and it's the exact same workout that my lady in the wheelchair does. It's just we accommodate it to your proclivities or limitations.
Yeah. No, I totally respect that. I'm just turning my light back on in this office. It's interesting because I think, so a while back I did a virtual workout with Discover Strength, and, they created I think Xavier put me through a pretty hard template, right? Because obviously I've been training body weight for a long time. And it's really interesting because they really turned me on to the exercises that actually I now use in some of the virtual workouts I provide. And one of what they do very well, similar to you in terms of the sequence, is they'll maybe pre-fatigue of a wall sit, but then they'll go into some, and this is for like a more advanced client. They love doing the reverse lunge, partial range of motion. So just in a lunge position, split squat is what we would call it in the UK probably. And you would just dip the knee to the floor and you would only do that lower partial range. With usually a rep count, because it's really hard. You try doing 12 reps of that movement real slow with a 10-second hold at the end. It burns. So they sequence that with a wall sit, and then they might do a partial range of motion full squat after that. Now these are great for advanced trainees, I think, and they do add some variety if you believe that that's important for retention and novelty. But like we're saying here, they're not ideal for someone who really can barely squat freehand, right?
No, well, the more you get into what I call, gimmickry, I mean, and then I would have a little bit of a basic physiological questioning about, are we going to failure on 3 similar exercises? And what's the point of 3 exercises? Okay. So yeah, does it burn? Shit. Yeah. Okay. I can make you burn doing some stuff that's not going to be very productive. Okay. So I have a problem with trying to be innovative and creative once we reach failure in the intended muscle groups. If that failure, as we assume, and I think we have witnessed for scores of years, is if that muscle failure in that predetermined range of time, okay, is correlated to metabolic threshold. Once we reach metabolic threshold, I think basically it's, we're really wasting our time unless we want to impress the people up. I know a lot of good stuff, and this workout's going to take longer, so you get more, more of my attention, so it's worth more. I don't go there. If my workout, I have people that get their workout done in 12 minutes, pat them on the butt, tell them I'll see you next time. Nobody says, oh, geez, can I do some more, Dr. Ben? Nobody says that. Okay? So I'm a little bit of a minimalist because I think by nature, people would rather get the most in return as long as they get a good return. Okay. So efficiency is not the total, but efficiency plus sufficiency, put those two together. It's sufficient to get where we want to go. That's my deal. Okay. So yeah, of course. And can you do other stuff than what I have created? Of course you can. I didn't invent exercise, but I do think I'm good at manipulating it and good at retention because people get results and understand. You know this, Lawrence. You got to understand where these people are coming from, what their limitations are, what their goals are, and personality. This is personal training, okay? It requires some personality, some personal interaction, some personal feedback, some assessment of what's going on that day with that person, okay? That to me is half the battle, okay? And I think somebody like you and me who are basically, pretty much, let's face it, fanatics, we've thought about this stuff much more than normal people think about things, okay? But we have that vitality. I mean, I've been doing this almost 50 years. And I took this kid through a workout the other day, Andrew, the type 1 diabetic. I was giddy. I said, this kid is kicking ass. He's doing great stuff. And he said, this is the best workout I've had in my life. And to me, I'm like, wow, it made my day. And I've done it tens of thousands of times. But every time I do it, I think there's an opportunity there to get the best I can out of that person that particular day. And even though I've done, squats or I've done, chest flies 80 million times with people, that particular set done right makes me smile, and so I'm happy. I'm lucky, but I'm happy, and it works. And so that makes it a good business.
Yeah, no, I love it. I completely respect your approach and your template and your style. I just had a couple more questions about the routine. I'm just very curious because there's some things that actually I just honestly don't know that much about. So when you do the rows with the resistance bands, have you ever encountered clients with shoulder issues? So when they're coming back into that kind of full contraction, pain in it. I mean, I have one client in particular who's had shoulder surgery from torn labrum from sport, from basketball. So he experiences, I would say, pain, not discomfort, actual pain when he gets to a deeper level of fatigue. So he'll stop short of failure on the rows. Have you experienced that? And how would you modify a band row to get someone closer to failure?
Okay. I've had 3 rotator cuff surgeries. I have no external rotators that exist in my left shoulder. Rows never bothered me. I've never bothered any of my rotator cuff people. You're talking about labrum, it's a little bit of a difference. So in the row, okay, what really is critical to the stress on the shoulder joint is the angle of the elbow. In other words, if the elbows are low, the humeral head is securely in that shallow joint. And the further out I go laterally with my elbow, the more I need rotator cuff. It affects the labrum. So if you can keep your elbows tucked really close, you probably are not going to have a shoulder issue. I've had people with no rotator cuff major surgeries, and I haven't had anybody have a problem doing that row. So that's what I would. And then if he couldn't do anything, or he had a very small tolerance for that, maybe I would do an isometric to failure and try to find a position, okay? Or maybe I would do, you can do one-arm rows, okay? You can do one-arm rows. You just take up slack on one side or make it shorter on the other. You can do, or do, like sometime with my pecs, because I don't have the leverage because of that rotator cuff, my left arm will have significantly more slack than my right arm, so I can keep up, okay? But if I raise that right elbow up on a pec fly in pure pec isolation, can't do it. So I have to lower that elbow, because then my humeral head has some security without having to rely on the rotator cuff. It has some skeletal security, if that makes any sense, okay? So you got to work with that kind of stuff, absolutely. And if there's pain, I don't do it. If there's achiness, they have to understand the difference, an ache and a pain, okay? And then I'll try to regulate. I'll isolate one side. I'll change the movement, because that person who can't do a row probably can't do a pull down or a chin. I mean, that's probably out of the question, okay? So I find the row the safest, or a pullover, okay? So I find the row the safest for that, to protect that shoulder joint or any kind of issue. That's my experience.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's great. What about in terms of range of motion for the rows? So I'm wondering, because this is one of the...
Yeah.
Sorry, say again?
Yeah. Range of motion, it depends. But again, you would think that, a severe retraction or elbows past the body, excuse me, going back would be a problem, but I don't find that it is. Okay. But a few people, 5% maybe, have some issue. We go comfortable range of motion. And if it's very limiting, then I have to try to figure out something. But I have not run into that at all, except maybe with one or two people. And then I had to go to a one-arm kind of a deal. And let's face it, if they're that compromised, we want to reduce the mechanical work. So we'll go to, an isometric or a hold, or something where the hold in a contracted position and step back in that hold position. But that's almost a therapeutic kind of a move. You understand what I'm saying? So your elbow's back even with your body plane, and now you have a little tension, and you just step back, and you don't move the shoulder joint at all, but you apply more tension by the stepping back. Okay, so these are just kind of little tricks or whatever.
Yeah, no, it's really useful. So I guess you could step back and or increase the resistance on the band to do an isometric at the end for getting that deeper fatigue if the individual is experiencing pain during a full range of motion. Or normal range of motion. So
no, I mean, you have to work around that. I mean, we're not there to cause pain, even though we know that it can be painful.
Yeah,
just overall.
It's that. I think once you describe to people the difference between kind of muscular discomfort and actual pain, they seem to understand and can discern between the two.
Yeah.
No, that's really helpful. What are your, in terms of the bicep curl, one of the things I noticed when you shared that video of you training Mark, is you said that actually it's okay if the elbows come forward. And I thought that was interesting because I don't know, I suppose I was always taught to have my elbows pinned at my sides for bicep curls, but you talked about how the function of the bicep is, I believe, related to
shoulder flexion.
Go ahead. Shoulder flexion.
It actually raises your elbow. But understand, we were all taught on a barbell or a dumbbell.
Right.
Okay. So bringing your arms forward, once you get up to within 10 to 15 degrees of a full flexion up to your shoulder with a barbell or a dumbbell, there's no effective resistance. So if you raise your elbows up, you're producing no extra bicep work. Okay. Understand, because it's linear, it's gravitational. But with the band, it's horizontal. Okay. So that you can feel, take it up to, just in front of your shoulders and do a little bit of a elbow extension, which means pull them out. You'll feel the extra. I mean, you can do it just by sitting in your chair. Go this way and then do some elbow extension. Okay, shoulder extension, which means come forward, and shoulder flexion. Sorry, everybody, shoulder flexion. Dr. Ben made a boo. Okay, so anyway, and then you're going to get that's one of the functions of the bicep. That's why you have three heads, one that goes across. So shoulder flexion is definitely part of bicep function, and obviously supination is primary. But anyway,
go ahead.
That's why.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So if you anchor the resistance band at the bottom of the door, would that change at all? Would you still have the same form? Would it still, because the
You'd
resistance
have
would be
less
cut?
of it because of the
Okay, so
angle.
it'd be closer to the barbell, that linear kind
Yeah,
of.
yeah, you would have
Yeah.
much less effective torque. Okay, so
Yep.
you'd be moving, but nothing would be happening as far as bicep function. Yeah,
Okay.
but I have them almost always put that doorstop thing about anywhere from shoulder to low chest height, depending on comfort, because that's
Mhm.
universal. I don't have to go changing it every time. I can do my rows, my curls, my triceps, straight arm. I call them kickbacks, just extensions, straight arm, from the front, palms down to your pockets, kind of a thing.
Mhm.
Straight arm, I call it a kickbacks, call whatever the hell you want. And I can do my rows, my pecs, my biceps, and my triceps. And then I can take it out of the door. Because again, I'm trying to make this as accommodating, without having to change 14 things at once.
Yeah, I think that's clever that you sequence the last exercises
Yeah.
with what makes it convenient for the anchoring of the resistance bands, like moving that about. I think that is
Here's
smart.
something interesting I found. Okay, deltoids are like fast twitch fibers like crazy, and we all know that means fast fatiguing. I mean, you can
Yeah.
do a couple of reps on a lateral raise, feels like beautiful, and the third rep just like grabs you and you're done. Okay, but what I've
Yeah.
done, for example, is you can put a 30 pound and a 20-pound band on. Okay, now I'll have people. I'm doing with a few people. Stand on the 30, let the 21 dangle. They'll do one or two and they feel great on the 30. The third one, almost every time, tough. I have them hold that for a few seconds and immediately step on the 20, get rid of the 30, and then go on. So at least they get close to 60 seconds of load time. And I tell them, everybody's shoulders gets tired very, very quickly. Okay, and so don't
Mhm.
be, and that it works wonderfully. And I get a great set. They get maybe 2 reps with 20, and the whole boom, we're gone. They're done.
Mhm.
So you learn. I've observed that and learned it. And that's some of the little tricks of the trade.
Yeah, it's probably a good time to underscore what you just said there is practice is everything. I mean, I just learn so much every time I do one of these sessions. It's a big part of it is just in the
Sure.
doing. Um,
Yeah.
what's your take on split stances versus like a shoulder width square stance? So because you're typically using a
On
split
the
stance
bands,
with people, yeah, with the bands, with a lot of
well,
the
I
motions.
think I have a. It's interesting. I think it's individual. Some
Okay.
people. I mean, I feel like I have to have one foot in front of the other when I get a lot of weight and resistance because it's going to pull. It's heavier than my torso. Okay, if I have 200 pounds on some bands in the door,
Hmm.
I'm barely 200 pounds, and my torso certainly isn't 200 pounds. So I have to get that lean. So you have to learn the lean, and you have to learn what is most posturally stable for that person. I have a couple of guys that put their feet square. I mean, and I can't. It doesn't work for me, and for some of my guys it doesn't. But some of them are okay. So however they've learned to balance, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, because I'd agree with you. Like if you're doing a pec fly and you're using a high load, that's hard to do that like without,
Oh yeah.
without split stance.
In
Kind
fact,
of.
what I also have done is made it so that I can put my foot against the door and then lean back. So I have that door to stabilize. I mean, that's how, when you get some big resistance on there, that's helped me. I haven't
That's
had to do that
creative.
with any of my clients yet, but for me, I mean, I like my foot against the door so I can lean back and get some, good weight on there, good resistance.
Just going back to your point about failure, I know it's kind of a difficult thing to define. But when you're training people virtually, because I think one of the challenges is knowing if you've really got the juice out of an exercise with someone, and I
Mm-hmm.
think partly that comes down to experience. But when for yourself, maybe you can give some examples. Like when would you recommend a rest pause or an isometric, and how do you kind of read if the individual needs a bit more work?
You know, um, I spoke to Kenny Hutchins like the first time in like 30 something years, about a year ago or so, maybe when he sent me his book, that new book, the music and exercise
Music and
book,
dance, yeah.
whatever he
Yeah.
did. And I, he mentioned something about some isometrics. And I always did a little bit of that. But now I am almost always ending a set with a little bit of a hold in the most critical or the most challenging position. And I think, if anything, psychologically it serves a purpose, but it's also an observational tool to see if there is a lot left. If I see somebody that can hold that critical position for a long time, then I know I haven't juiced it yet. I mean, I haven't gotten there. And they'll understand that too. And I'll say, let's make sure we get this thing done. Let's not leave anything in the bag, kind of a thing. And that you work on as people progress and understand what fatigue is and what they feel. But a lot of it, in my mind, Lawrence, I see some people, you can recognize failure when somebody almost gives up, even though they're trying not to, and they just can't apply good tension. Okay, so that's the art to the science. Okay, a little bit. So, and I do it more than I used to. Even myself, because I think I think I'm getting some benefit, and psychologically, you want to make sure you didn't leave anything in the bag. You want to make sure you got it all out. So, do I think it's night and day? No, I don't. Do I think it's helpful? Yes, I do. So I use it more often than not.
Yeah, I had this experience yesterday where I had someone doing tricep extensions with dumbbells or skull crushers, French press, whatever you want to call it. And they were lying on their back, and I just wasn't convinced they'd really tried as hard as they could because obviously your triceps, when they're really burning, it takes a lot of discipline to push through that discomfort, right? And I must have made him do like 4 rest pauses. And then by the 4th set, he just was like, I'm not even lifting these things. And I'm like, right now I'm convinced that's deep enough.
Again, it depends on the person, right?
Yes.
Some people think, oh, he's torturing me. Some people think, wow, he really made you work. That was great.
That's a good point. That's a good point, actually, because you're right. If I was working with someone who didn't appreciate that person might not come back. So it's knowing the client, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, interesting stuff. What's your view on, I was talking with an experienced trainer the other day, and we were talking about how you go about selecting resistance for virtuals. It's quite difficult it's difficult to know right off the bat what someone's going to be able to use. So how have you done that? Is it trial and error? Like, how do you set resistance?
Using any device. First of all, you have to become a little facile. You have to have some knowledge of what does it feel like to you, kind of a thing, right? So then you have a relevant scale, a relative scale. And then I always start conservatively. And if I say, if this feels like you could do it until we close shop here at 5 o'clock and it's 9 in the morning, that's too light. Okay. If I see them struggling, but I'm almost always conservative, and I know what people use. I have norms for this thing already, and I've been only doing it a few months, but I know what more, and then once in a while, somebody's going to surprise you. You're going to have some great leverage for something that you wouldn't, or somebody's going to have some poor leverage. Okay. But you should know what those things allow. Start off really conservatively. The advantage of the bands, you can put 3 bands on the handles that I have everybody get. So I can have a 10, a 20, and a 40. So I can go anywhere from 10 to 70 pounds in 10-pound increments. Okay, step on 1, release 1, blah, 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 right? So you can I also try to make sure with my people that I really get into it, I say, get me 2 sets of handles. One's going to be heavy, one's going to be light. So we don't have to, because you try to take a 100-pound band off one of those handles, Lawrence, that's, strongman stuff, okay? That in itself is a feat of strength. So absolutely. I try to kind of preset that to get an extra set of handles, like $12 or something, and it really makes the workout go more smoothly. But in the beginning, you're not going to use those big bands anyway. So how do I select? I know what the bands provide as far as resistance for most people, and I select conservatively, meaning lighter, and then we'll go from there. And I do the same thing with machines too.
I know you mentioned that the resistance bands you recommended were like out of stock. Is there a particular brand that you do recommend?
Well, I have a relationship, and they've done good by me, with Lifeline Fitness. Okay. And I don't know if you post stuff.
I put it in the show notes for this blog post.
And there's a gal, Joyce, who's in charge of bands. She's apparently the band person.
The band lady.
I got a phone number and an extension, and she takes care of me. I think Lifeline Fitness, which is I can't remember the other name they use, Escalade Sports, Lifeline Fitness, had been really reliable. They've sent me many sets for shows and things like that. And if you have any problems, this lady Joyce can talk to you. And I think they even have a set called, somebody told me there's a Dr. Ben set. I don't know what the hell that is, but in any case, and you're supposed to, if you mention that, you get a 10% discount. Something. I don't know. I know I don't make any money on it, but God, save a few bucks, that's good for them. That's fine. But anyway, and I usually recommend for beginners a 10, 20, 40, and 80-pound band. Okay? So that gets me up to 120 pounds, 140 pounds in 10-pound increments if I maneuver them. Okay? And a set of handles and a doorstop. And that's it. You can start. I mean, anybody can start. I can get a decent workout with that if I really maneuver it. And then if you get stronger, you buy yourself another 80 or 100-pound band, and then you got a whole new set of stuff. So,
absolutely. Do you know what? Before we wrap up, Ben, I just wanted to mention one thing. You shared a video with me, obviously you training Mark, and I thought it was really interesting because at the end, his testimony was quite powerful because I felt that Mark could have pushed harder on certain exercises, and maybe he's making that progress so that he's kind of on that, like most of us, he's on that path to understand his body better, hone the skills for the exercises that he can train harder over time, right? That's kind of what we're trying to do. But what was still fascinating is even though he's probably not at that stage yet, he was like, I love this. It's efficient. I feel stronger. This is his words. More muscle tone, more stability, more active, which is interesting, talking about how HIIT really makes you more active generally. And how you, Ben, helped him through it. So you were kind of saying to him, look, I can give you the workout and the tools and the information for you to do this yourself. But I think there's a lot of value in you actually walking him through it. And that's why I think there's a huge opportunity for virtual personal training for a lot of the HIIT people out there.
Now, to answer that specifically, I'm going to do another recording with Mark, and you'll see the progress, and exactly what you're talking about. So when he fails, he fails now. Okay, but again, it's a learning process. And don't forget, in the beginning, like I said, if I'm only like 82% ideally productive, he's still going to progress. Now the window's smaller. He's getting close to that genetic, ceiling. And so he's training harder. He's learned it, And some people never learn it, Lawrence, and some people pick it up quickly, but you got to stay with that. You got to try to progress it.
Yeah, and I've found for myself, you just have to it's really important to put yourself in like a real novice's shoes, and have a lot of empathy and really a lot of patience, I think is a word I'm looking for, with certain individuals, because people, like you say, there's a lot of people out there who aren't going to pick this up very quickly, and they need time to learn how to do the exercises, to learn how to push themselves hard. So, I
mean, if they're coming to you regularly and they're paying you, unless there's something really, there's some really weird behavioral problem, they want to do well. They want to get stuff. They want to get a good return. So you got to go along with that basic premise and help them do it.
Yeah, 100%. Dr. Ben, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me on the show again. How can people find out more about you?
Dr. Benbow at hotmail.com. Dr. Benbow, I think is my website. 15 Minutes of Fitness is believe me, I don't even know, but and now it's funny. The other day I just for the hell of it Googled Dr. Ben, and some amazing scientist from Pakistan came up, and I was the second one in the international Google. So that's another way. But anyway, 15 Minutes to Fitness is my book, available on Amazon. Like I said, I make at least $2 every time I sell one, so it's a real big winner, But I mean, I like for people to have it, and I think it has a lot of good information. And to me, it's like a really expensive business card. People get it, and then they know who Dr. Ben is. So, I give them away or I sell them really cheap. But I think it's like $17 on Amazon. Probably worthwhile if you want anything to refer to about all the stuff we've been talking about.
It's an excellent read, and I highly recommend it. I have a copy myself. And you've got all the diet stuff in there, all the training programs that you hinted at on this podcast. So no, I think it's a great companion book to this podcast, actually. And for everyone listening, to find and by the way, all the details about Dr. Ben's website, all that stuff will be in the show notes. Even though Dr. Ben does not know his website, we will find his website. We'll put it in the blog post. And for everyone listening, to find the blog post for this episode and download free PDF resources to help you grow your high-intensity training business, please go to highintensitybusiness.com, search for episode 287. And until next time, thank you very much for listening.